Good afternoon, Crime Crunchies. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I am your host, Courtney C., a 27-year veteran of the media, and I am so happy to be able to now bring you Crime Crunchies. All right, we are going to be diving back into my theory, working theory, that the family has had an idea of who took. Oopsie. Hold on, I have. Sorry, tech problem here. Okay. So my working theory of that the family knows who, they don't have a name, but they know that there's been something going on in the background of Savannah. And so they know exactly why Nancy was taken. And it is what I believe to be basically a targeted abduction and ransom. I kind of thought maybe this was retaliation, but we've got more information here now. And when we speculate, we are putting pieces together. And of course, nothing is ever going to be confirmed until it's confirmed. But I am trying to evolve with the times. And the things that we've seen in the past few days about this new group, well, they're not new, but new to us, Buscando Corazones de Nogales, the mothers who have been apparently looking for Nancy. A couple dates kind of hit me while on the last day. I took yesterday off, and I still have to think that my theory ultimately that Savannah is the link to all of this, but that she knew she had been contacted prior to this kidnapping and had not done something. I had thought that it was in retaliation to somebody. I didn't know what they wanted, but looking at this new information about the potential that an anonymous tipster had called in to Buscando Corazones de Nogales. The first call was on May 10th, which is Mother's Day. And timing is everything. Okay. We always had wondered why that particular January 31st, February 1st, why that weekend? Now it seems like could be a potential tie-in with Savannah getting ready to leave for Italy for the Olympics. This is more of an option to hurt Savannah. Why May 10th? And what happened on May 10th? Okay, that's Mother's Day. And Savannah had put out a Mother's Day message on Instagram. There seemed to be notes that had been sent out on specific days. Okay, I'm going to pull up the timeline that one of my viewers had provided. And while I'm doing that, please remember to subscribe. If you're not already subscribed, please do so. So this is a timeline that my viewer JV had given me, and we'd gone through his very, very detailed working theory about Savannah and Nancy, and a tie-in with APS, the Adult Protective Services card, and basically that somebody had a grudge against Savannah, that she hadn't done something that they wanted, and knew that the mother was in Tucson. And I do agree that whoever is behind this already knew that Savannah had a mother in Tucson, and I think that played into all of this. And how does that play into this is the location, okay? Location of having Savannah's mom in Tucson. So in December 2025, Nancy's dog dies. Whether it's tied in or not, we're not sure. January 11th, Nancy's Nest camera captures the masked person doing recon. January 31st, we see porch guy in the morning of February 1st. And then let's skip ahead to February 2nd. TMZ receives the first note, and we've got ransom demands with a specific Bitcoin account number. Okay. And it's the same Bitcoin account number that is in all of these notes. Okay. We've got posts of videos going up. We're going to kind of skip forward a little bit again. And April 6th, Savannah returns to work on the Today Show. April 6th, TMZ receives 2 emails regarding Nancy, largely termed as a hoax. But in all this time, in these notes that TMZ is getting, they're using the same Bitcoin account number. And Harvey Levin has said he's seen all of these notes, he's gotten all of these notes, and he's saying that they look like they're legitimate. And in one of the notes on February 6th, received a second note. There was no demand for money, and they stated Nancy is dead. There had been a note in this group where it was noted that they wanted half of a Bitcoin. And if they received half a Bitcoin, they were going to tell Harvey Levin where Nancy was. They had seen her in Sonora. She was no longer alive. They knew where she was buried. They would give the location. I think that was the April 6th email as well that they received. It was April 6th is when they received 2 emails. And this is when this person said, I'd seen her in Sonora, Mexico. We don't know if she was alive or not. She could have been in a safe house. And they would share the location of where she was buried, April 6th. So May 10th, what we don't have on this timeline, because this is something that we just learned, is on May 10th, Buscando Corazones Nogales received, trying to find my right screen here, received, here it is. This is the one from Arizona family. And I do want to make mention that other than really local news and like Yahoo and some, fringe websites, there's nothing really posted about this latest, digging and searching in Nogales by any major media. Okay. Which to me is odd. And I have an article here where we're going to see that one group thinks it's not important, and some other folks think it could be important. But I want to point out that May 10th, Mother's Day, Buscando Corazones de Nogales, Sonora said it received a phone call on May 10th, the first phone call from this tipster, that Guthrie was buried in an unmarked shallow grave near Nogales. And I will continue reading this. I covered this on my Friday show. Quote, it was a man, and he said to go look in that area, and said that's where the missing woman from Tucson was, Ortiz said through an interpreter. Ortiz said the first search was May 16th, and they had up to 15 volunteers looking in the area for Guthrie. But she said the tipster called back trying to give more directions where to search. By the end of May, this person called back. I'm paraphrasing right now, but here's her quote. By the end of May, they told me we were close to where she was, so then that helps us narrow it down to another area. They did a second search on this last Wednesday, a little more than 4 miles from the border, and they didn't find anything. But they have located 25 unmarked graves. Okay, so again, timing is everything, and there are a lot of patterns. Okay, we've got the first timing of February 1st. Why February? And I asked this very early. A lot of people, why that particular Saturday night? Well, the next week, February 2nd, Savannah's scheduled trip to cover Winter Olympics in Italy for NBC is canceled. She had been scheduled to go over to Italy and host the opening ceremonies that first week of February. So we believe that this plan has been going on for some time. It was, I believe, September, and I don't want to say the date because I'm not sure about the date, but I believe it was in 2025 that Savannah did the segment where she had lunch with her sister Annie and her mother, good girl does good, coming back home to Tucson, going back to her high school and her sorority, and then that she's having lunch with her mother. And it's very easy to see that the mother lives in Tucson. And Nancy has the last name Guthrie, Savannah Guthrie, Nancy Guthrie. Probably wasn't a whole lot of, privacy. You could find a lot of people on paid sites like truthfinder.com. It probably was not very difficult for somebody to get Nancy Guthrie's address. Now, my theory that Savannah is the link comes from several different things. First of all, everybody's immediate response on February 1st, when Annie and Tommaso come to the house after mom is missing and they call 911, law enforcement shows up. Even Annie immediately says, I think mom has been taken. I think she's been kidnapped. The brother Cam, who seems very no nonsense, very quiet, very serious. Maybe he's not in real life, but he comes across as, a no nonsense kind of guy, immediately says, my mother was kidnapped for money. All right. Again, not a normal response. If mom is not there, I would even think maybe mom had a stroke. Maybe mom had a stroke and is wandering around. That would be what I would think. Okay. I think mom probably had an episode, something happened, and she's had a medical emergency and she's out wandering. No, everybody said mom's been kidnapped. So Savannah has mentioned in a Hoda interview and a bunch of different times, she's got a different kind of guilt because she says when she sees her brother and her sister, is this because of me? Okay. Let alone, I have a common friend who works in the same industry as Cam. They had training together, Sims training for flying. And Cam specifically told my friend, really the only thing, because my friend's very respected, the only thing that Cam mentioned that was very specific is this is 100% linked to Savannah. So this falls into my theory that somebody had been reaching out to Savannah prior to this kidnapping. Savannah had, maybe the threats were escalating. Savannah had not done what they had wanted. And if this is a Bitcoin grab, that actually falls into place that somebody could have been asking her for money. And it's too convenient that they've targeted Savannah. Because my next question is, why Savannah Guthrie? Location. If I find out that here's a rich lady from Tucson, her mother lives in Tucson, I'm either in Arizona or I'm in Sonora or near the border. Wow, I can get money. And this is the cartel does. They do kidnap for ransom. Now, a lot of experts have said this is not cartel. But how do we know this isn't somebody either on the fringe of the cartel, related to the cartel, maybe somebody who has done work with the cartel and went off on their own to do this because they saw a money grab? This is somebody who doesn't look very intelligent. They did look very calm and comfortable. So they could have been somebody who had done crimes before and were smart enough to pull this off. But they don't come across as like a mastermind, as we've all discussed many, many times. Okay. So if this is a Bitcoin deal, Nancy probably doesn't have Bitcoin. Savannah, she and her husband are wealthy. And if they have, I think I heard anywhere from like 43 million, 45 million, don't quote me on that. If they've got that much money and they have money in investments, it's very, very, very possible that they either have money that they can access to turn into Bitcoin, or maybe they have invested in Bitcoin. That part doesn't really matter if they actually have a Bitcoin wallet, because if you've got money, you can move it into Bitcoin. Okay, anybody can move their money into Bitcoin. So this person could have seen Savannah do her interview for the Today Show, talk about her mother, know that the mother lives in Tucson, because why else are they going to pick Savannah? If there is not a romantic fixation, and that is definitely a possibility, absolutely. But now that we're seeing what we're seeing, and the fact that Bitcoin keeps coming up, Jennifer Coffindaffer has been talking about a while now that this could be a wrench attack. And I'm going to post this. Hi, aristocratic. I thought this was not about money. I thought it was a revenge and retaliation as well. But did it not feel like money because Nancy died so quickly? And they weren't going to be able to show proof of life. So was it originally a money grab? And it was screwed up during the actual kidnap, and it could not be a money grab any longer, other than the person who had emailed on April 6th saying, okay, you know what? The only way I'm going to get money now is let me get a Bitcoin. I'll send you to her grave anonymously. And apparently, as far as we know, going through the tmz.com contact us page supposedly kept this person pretty anonymous. So April 6th, the person's emails through with the same wallet, same Bitcoin wallet we've seen since the very beginning, or Harvey Levin has seen since the very beginning. April 6th, same day Savannah returns to work on Today's Show. May 10th, Savannah posts a Mother's Day tribute on video. May 10th, the tipster calls Buscando. Somebody who's local. I'm sorry. I'm not laughing. Somebody sent me $98.99. No one is going to send you $98. This is my sister. I'm sorry. I'm not laughing at Nancy. I just saw that, and I told you I have a weird sense of humor, as does my sister. She's crunchy sissy. Crunchy sissy is being bad right now. Go away, crunchy sissy. All right, we're going back to the timeline. May 10th. This person, okay, by the way, this person is watching Savannah. This person is paying attention to Savannah. This person is very interested in what Savannah is doing, because they know on April 6th, Savannah returns to the Today Show, and they're like, you know what? I'm not getting what I want. Let me just bubble this up a little bit. They send in a couple of emails to TMZ. And that, of course, makes global news. May 10th, she's got a Mother's Day photo or video, tribute video on Instagram. A call goes into Buscando Corazones, okay? At this point, I'm not sure how this person on April 6th goes from give me a Bitcoin for this transaction to May 10th, I'm now turning in this information, and now they don't want any money. Okay, I'm not sure if this person, what Jennifer Coffindaffer calls a mope, a low lying worker bee, a mope. If he is a mope, I don't know what he's getting out of this. And so that part I'm not exactly sure about. But I do have to think that it is possibly still connected. And it's very possible that this person the nexus of all of this, which we've kind of all thought is the fact the nexus is that whole Today Show segment in Tucson where Nancy Guthrie, is featured on that show, and people know she lives in Tucson. And I bet you anything, Savannah really regrets ever doing that. And I am pretty sure that NBC probably never does another live segment in somebody's hometown ever again. I don't know. Maybe they will. They don't. Maybe they will. Maybe they are into the money. I'm sure they are. So how many times did this person reach out to Savannah between the time of that segment and January 11th when they start reconning Nancy's house? Okay. How many times was Savannah contacted? Did NBC receive any emails on their contact us page that were given to Savannah or her assistants? And I'll post this because this is great. This is a good comment. No one kidnaps an 84-year-old lady with many health issues. The motive was to disappear her into Mexico. The only reason why they picked Nancy is because her daughter is famous and got national global attention. Yeah, and Savannah, it's probably pretty easy to see that she makes a lot of money. Her husband, a lot of people have pointed the finger at her husband's business dealings and even Nancy's business dealing and the whole Epstein thing. I mean, they're in thick with a lot of different things, which has caused a lot of confusion. I mean, we might get a direction next week because I had not thought, even listening about these wrench attacks and learning about wrench attacks, I didn't even seem to think that that's what this was. But I just have to wonder now if it was, with her living in Tucson, somebody maybe over the border in Nogales with some sort of criminal contact, cartel or not, somebody who, happens to do bad things, doesn't have a conscience to do this thing to get money, is aware of a dumping ground. Okay. Anybody who was aware that specific area was being used as a dumping ground has some connections to bad dealings. And would be my question is, does the cartel, do they even bury people? That would be my next question is, does the cartel, when they do their things, do they bury people or do they just leave them because they're so powerful? They don't have to take the time to bury people. That's probably going to be what I'm looking into next is, what type of criminals in that part of Mexico are going to do what they do for kidnap for Bitcoin, and do they typically bury their victims? And I mean, it took an hour and a half to get to the border. Brian Enton went to the border. He didn't even have his passport on the way back. And Buscando Corazones had, in one of the interviews, had mentioned that they got a tip in February. They started looking in February for the lady from Tucson, but they were told to go to a corridor where it's easier to get across the border. Because Nogales, that is a bit of a touristy entrance and exit in and out of the US and into Mexico. It is a bit touristy. You walk across some gates or you drive in, you drive out. And so they originally were looking about 19 miles west of where they've been looking recently. In February, they were looking about 19 miles west near a corridor where coyotes or, mules of some type go in and out, and it's probably a hole in the fence or the wall, and people can get across without cameras. And yeah, there would be more people involved in this because with the car. Let's see. Mike, you say Kalela has ties to Mexico. Can you elaborate or point me to a article? Because this all ties in too, okay? Because we've got those weird texts on February 4th. Guthrie siblings release the first video in their appeal, which again, this date for this text from Derek Kalela ties in to a public video. Their very first video was February 4th. There's a lot of mirroring. Okay. Dates when the family comes out with messages, dates when Savannah is doing something, dates before Savannah is doing something. Okay. Very odd. And if Derek Kalela texts that really, really weird, I mean, how coincidental text on February 4th, does he have any connection to the person that is behind this? Again, it could be ancillary, could be satellite. I have to think that, again, for some reason, there seems to be some sort of emotion in the writer of even the letters through TMZ, because one of the letters states, Nancy's gone to be with God. So I'm paraphrasing. I'm sorry. There was an apology in one. And then, somebody offering to help them find her body. Is this somebody with a conscience? People in the cartel do not have a conscience. And yeah, I'm probably stereotyping, but they're very violent. And I think that they get numb to the violence. So, who is this person? How do they all mix together? How can this be about money and yet not be about money? Because this person at this point, if the person calling Buscando Corazones is the same person from the April 6th notes through TMZ and they know where she's buried, have they given up on not getting the money? Is there somebody with a connection to Buscando Corazones de Nogales? Because while they're doing good work and they all have a link to a loved one who either was kidnapped or missing, and they found good people. I'm not saying that there's anything, they obviously their heart is in the right place. Do they get a reward if they find Nancy? Is there a payout for this group? Is somebody working with somebody in the group? I don't know. I'm just raising the question. Again, I think we have to look at everything. Does this group get the money from Nancy? Not saying whether they should or they shouldn't. If they find Nancy, go for it. But is there maybe some agreement between the person, the anonymous tipster calling in and saying, you find Nancy, let's split the money? This person could still be working an angle to get money. We don't know what the conversation is. And, it's very possible, if they find Nancy, if these people are out there digging, I mean, shoot, they found 25 unmarked rapes. There are so many families who now have answers, which is unbelievable. It's amazing. But what if, and I don't want to make it sound like a negative, it is what it is. But what if the anonymous tipster says, I'll tell you where she is. If you get the reward money, just give me part of it. I mean, who's to say that isn't an angle? If they are wanting money. Now, the retaliation thing, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Everybody says Savannah is a very, very nice person, but she is in a cutthroat industry. How do we know that she hasn't come up or said something or backstabbed somebody? I don't know. All right, let me look at the comments here a little bit. Yeah, this group has been digging. I think that they were told to stop digging in the wash because it was private property and were told to leave. So, okay, so I still believe that Savannah knew something was going on. Someone had been asking her for money. She didn't do it. She probably thought they would go away. It doesn't matter if Savannah had Bitcoin or not, because if she's got money, you can transfer money into Bitcoin. So it doesn't matter if she has Bitcoin. And this, whoever was going after Savannah, I mean, we don't know. Nancy could have had $1 million sitting in the bank that could be transferred into Bitcoin. All right. Either way, it's established that they've got money. Why Savannah Guthrie? Well, it makes sense if she's on TV with her mother. Her mother lives in Tucson, which happens to be very close to where this person is doing their business. Very easy to get her across the border. In the very beginning, law enforcement was looking across the border. Okay, that tells me a lot. That it made sense to law enforcement that she could have been put across the border very quickly as well. All right, so let's go to, let's look at what some people who are smarter than I am are saying, okay? Nancy Guthrie case, latest news, FBI expert flags suspicious anonymous tip as Arizona search yields as no breakthrough. Investigation continues. So here's an FBI expert saying that this is not a breakthrough. So this is from today, June 14th. Nancy Guthrie case, latest news. The search for Nancy Guthrie has taken another unexpected turn after an anonymous tip reportedly led volunteers to a remote location in Arizona. However, according to a missing persons expert, the latest development may be creating more questions and answers as investigators work to determine whether the information is credible. Actually, let's see. Hold on. I just want to make sure. All right. I'm just going to continue reading this. It may or may not be somebody saying it's not a breakthrough. Let's just see what it says. Why don't we do that? All right. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer says the latest anonymous tip in the Nancy Guthrie disappearance investigation raises significant questions as authorities continue searching for answers months after she vanished. Case expert. Expert says new Arizona tip raises more questions and answers. The search for Nancy Guthrie has taken another unexpected turn after an anonymous tip reportedly led volunteers to a remote location in Arizona. However, according to a missing persons expert, the latest development may be creating more questions and answers as investigators work to determine whether the information is credible. Anonymous tip sparks new search efforts. According to reports highlighted by Men's Journal, volunteers involved in the search for Nancy Guthrie were directed to a remote area in Arizona after receiving an anonymous tip. The lead prompted renewed search activities, but authorities have not announced any major breakthrough or evidence connected to the location. Investigators have yet to reveal whether anything significant was discovered during the search, leaving many aspects of the lead unclear. Jennifer Coffindaffer, if I can talk, a former FBI agent and missing persons expert, said the anonymous tip stands out because of both its timing and the limited information available about the source. While anonymous tips are common in high-profile missing person investigations, Coffindaffer noted that reliable information often includes specific details that investigators can independently verify. The lack of publicly available information about the tipster has raised additional concerns about its credibility. According to the expert, investigators will likely focus on determining where the information originated and why it surfaced several months after Guthrie disappeared. But here's my question. We don't know that it came out on May 10th, apparently, is the first time. May 10th. So this person, again, very patient. This person likes to just float around for a while. They're not in any big hurry, guys. Nancy Guthrie, the mother of Today co-host of Savannah Guthrie, disappeared from her Arizona home. Since then, local, state, federal authorities, along with volunteers, have conducted an extensive search. Okay, we know this. Give me something new. In recent weeks, the investigation has drawn increased attention from social media creators, online personalities, and amateur investigators who have traveled to Arizona to follow development. This article seems to be a lot of fluff. Coffindaffer emphasized that the latest anonymous tip could ultimately prove important, but she has also warned against assuming it will lead to answers before investigators complete their review. At this stage, authorities have not publicly disclosed any findings linked to the search prompted by the tip. As a result, the development remains another unresolved element in a case already filled with unanswered questions. Okay, so let's see if we can learn anything from. Now, this one says it's a huge breakthrough. Since Nancy Guthrie was abducted from her Tucson, Arizona home, observers have been waiting for one thing, a major break that could finally lead to answers. Now, an expert with many years of experience has announced a huge breakthrough in the case. Jennifer Coffindaffer is a retired FBI special agent and SWAT team member who is now a News Nation contributor and the host of Break the Case with Jen Coffindaffer. During an episode on her show, she revealed that she worked for the Bureau for 28 years. On June 13th, Coffindaffer posted about a huge breakthrough in the Nancy Guthrie case on X. In her post, she reacted to a major cybersecurity company designating the disappearance as a wrench attack and noted it seemed to know something highly significant about the case. Interesting. I haven't watched her show in a bit. So she's saying she had someone on with a major cybersecurity company saying they seem to know something highly significant and it could be a wrench attack. All right, quote, Nancy Guthrie. It's the biggest public break in Nancy's case as Certic, arguably the leading crypto security company in the world, has designated Nancy's abduction as a wrench attack by proxy. Does Certic have knowledge as to whether Savannah has a Bitcoin account? Again, I don't know that she has to have a Bitcoin account. Savannah can open a Bitcoin account. If my mom is kidnapped, I'm going to get a Bitcoin account. So I'm not sure that makes a big difference. So let me continue. This is a huge breakthrough. Times have changed, and how these networks operate is new to law enforcement. Unless law enforcement knows who took Nancy, then a wrench by proxy is on the table. Certic seems to know. The huge breakthrough explained. As part of a recent blog post, the cybersecurity company Certic designated Nancy Guthrie's kidnapping a wrench attack in no uncertain terms. Additionally, it specifically noted that the people who took her were seeking $6 million in Bitcoin. Originally, they were, yes. Nancy Guthrie, United States, January 2026. It looks like a byline. Okay, the 84-year-old mother of journalist Savannah Guthrie was kidnapped as part of a $6 million Bitcoin ransom demand, illustrating the documented trend of proxy target selection already identified in our 2025 report. Okay, so this is a quote on their social media or blog post by Certic. So Certic is saying Nancy Guthrie, okay, the 84-year-old mother of journalist Savannah Guthrie was kidnapped as part of a $6 million Bitcoin ransom demand, illustrating the documented trend of proxy target selection already identified in our 2025 report, unquote, by Certic. A wrench attack is a tech term that describes a specific criminal act. Instead of trying to hack into someone's digital wallet, a criminal uses physical force, threats, or kidnapping against a loved one to force the owner to hand over access. Jennifer Coffendaver's confident post signifies that she believes Surtick wouldn't make such a serious claim without solid evidence pointing to that exact conclusion. For Surtick to be this confident that Nancy is the victim of a wrench attack, they would almost certainly have data showing that the kidnapping was an attempt to gain access to cryptocurrency. That is why Coffendaffer pointedly asked in her post, does Surtick have knowledge as to whether Savannah has a Bitcoin account? Unquote. Given how specific Surtick's statement was, the evidence that Nancy was targeted by a wrench attack would very likely be a digital $6 million Bitcoin ransom demand. If that is true, which Coffendaffer's post implies she believes it is, it means the abductors have left behind a permanent digital trail for investigators to track. This trail could ultimately unmask the individuals responsible for taking Nancy, which is exactly why the former FBI agent deemed this development a huge breakthrough. To fully understand why Surtick labeling Nancy's disappearance a wrench attack is potentially so meaningful, you have to know more about that company. An article updated on June 4th, 2026 from Traxin, a publicly traded and highly credible third-party outlet used to track private company, notes that Surtick is currently valued at $2 billion. Additionally, the website notes that it has raised $296 million in funding from investors like Tiger Global Management, Coinbase, and Insight Partners. Surtick putting its reputation on the line by officially designating Nancy's abduction a proxy wrench attack puts all that money at risk because its credibility is everything. That is why it seems very difficult to believe the company would make the distinction about the Guthrie case without seeing solid evidence. That data would inherently open up major new investigative paths for law enforcement officials to follow. So when Savannah asks Cam, is this because of me? And he says, yes, I'm sorry, it is. It could be because she is the only one in the family worth $45 million and somebody took their mother kidnapped for ransom. So she knows it's her. And it's because she has money. I see a lot of people. It looks like folks are still thinking it's the family. And you know what? It could be. Who knows? You know, is this somebody that the family, like a third party, the family had take Nancy? I don't know. Somebody wanted to get money. And like I said, is it possible? Is it possible that whoever is leading, and we don't know, okay? I'm just going to guess or just talk through. All right, let's just talk through. Let's say the person calling into Buscando Corazones does have information, does know where Nancy is buried. How do we know that they haven't worked something out? If you guys get the ransom, just give something to me. Because you know what? Honestly, if Buscando does return Nancy and the family does pay them $1 million, that's a lot of money. I mean, it could be that this person is still trying to cash in some way. They could threaten somebody in the group and say, I know who you are. I know where you live. You're going to share this reward with me or you'll pay. So the threat could be going forward, because I can't think that somebody who really knows where Nancy's body is not still trying to get money. And yeah, I did not think that this was about money. I thought this was more about retaliation. But if this is all lining up and this is a Bitcoin money grab, I mean, it could be somebody who is trying to make a bad situation work for them. Because at this point, the only way they're going to get anything is if Nancy's body is returned and there's a very clear tie to how she's returned. Like I've said many times, you don't just get a check same day. If you turn in a tip that leads to the recovery of Nancy Guthrie, there has to be, especially if there's no one arrested. I don't know if that's going to be a part of it too. Maybe they won't get paid if nobody's arrested, but if the family is willing to pay reward for people who are returning their mother's body, which I would think that they would, because at this point they know she's gone. They just want her back. They need the closure. Then, let's turn that frown upside down. How do we know that this isn't still a money grab? I don't know that anybody, no one has to have a conscience. They could be just saying, you know what? I know where she's at. Let me see if I can still get something out of this, because the object was to have Nancy be alive. I mean, we've heard horrible stories about wrench attacks. Jennifer Coffindaffer, who I learned about the term from, said that a father, an elderly father of a son who had money, who had Bitcoin, they took the father, freaking cut off one of his fingers. And the son paid, and the father was released. But I mean, Nancy probably did not survive. Well, we know she didn't survive. And she wasn't alive to do proof of life. So, they couldn't stay in the traditional. The $6 million was out the window. They gave up on that because she was dead. And, PCSD or PCSO, they immediately started looking across the border. I remember that there was a lot of talk about thinking that somebody had come in and taken her, especially looking at Porch Guy. I mean, the way he was dressed, the gun was weird. People were saying that nobody carries a gun like that. And people thought that that could be a cartel, the way he was carrying the gun, the holster. But there was just a lot of confusion. Derek Colello. I mean, again, there's a lot of coincidences in dates. People going public and then communications happening. If Derek does have ties to Nogales or Sonora, does he have, a friend of a cousin or someone who's in that circle? They have him on house arrest. So, and again, unless they're using Derek as, the first one going in and getting a deal, then why would he be, with an ankle monitor and at home? Are they using him for more information? Does he have any information? Is he helping the feds? Is he helping Pima County? And the people that they did detain, the 3 people in the 2 SWAT raids, did they detain them? Again, not because one of them was a package delivery driver. Did they detain them because they have ties with somebody who did this? And they let them go because, again, they are far enough out of it that they're not innocent, but that they're not behind it. How do we know that, because I think that one of the places that they went and detained the one guy while he was doing a DoorDash was Rio Rico, is way south near the border. So, I mean, are they working with these guys, and are they putting someone undercover? Is there a mole now? But Savannah, nobody was surprised. Again, they all went to kidnap for ransom. There's no way that Annie and Cam are going to go to kidnap for ransom immediately unless Savannah has been confronted and asked for something. There had to have been a threat. And, even if Savannah had been contacted and threats were escalating, they're not going to know that their mother's in danger. They probably, if anything, Savannah would have been beefing up security for her children in New York. There's no world where you're going to think, living in New York and somebody coming after you for money, that my 84-year-old mother is not safe in her home that she's lived in for 50 years in Tucson. And it's too coincidental. I don't know what the deal is with Derek Colello. I don't know. But again, it's just too weird. I read his charges. I mean, and he texted both Annie and Tommaso with very specific language, like, where's the Bitcoin? And it looked like, the way that it was written, it makes anybody with a brain look like there had been a previous conversation about Bitcoin. Someone had talked about Bitcoin with someone before that whole thing happened. And now someone's waiting for Bitcoin. Someone that was going, and I had originally thought that somebody could have been going through Derek. There could have been a threat on Derek's part too. Somebody could have been contacting Derek, knowing that he knows Tommaso, saying, anonymously, hey, Derek, I know you know Tommaso. I know you know these people. You're in danger too. You better get me this money, or maybe your mom gets taken, Derek. It's hard to say. Again, I'm just thinking through all the different avenues of how these things could be linked. Derek is out on bail. We just read through his release papers. I can pull them up again. I'm happy to pull those up again. He's not in jail. We read his release papers. So he's not in jail. He's out. He's actually able to go between California and Arizona, and he has to wear an ankle bracelet. So February 12th, he was released and had to submit his passport. So he's been out since February 12th, and that's the only thing I could find. And I literally was going in the docket. He is not in jail. And yeah, I totally think that they probably have undercover people going on. They probably have people in jail, and they probably have been reaching out to parole officers, because parole officers, are in with these people if they've been released. And yes, the texts really bother me too. Let's read the text, because again, it's just too coincidental. So let's just review the text that happened on February 4th. Again, the first day that a message is put out on social media, on or about February 4th, 2026, shortly after the video was published. So again, the video is published. Somebody's watching Savannah's social media. They're very curious to what she's doing. AC and TC, the daughter and son-in-law of NG, both separately received a text message from the following phone number, stating, "Did you get the Bitcoin? We're waiting on our end for the transaction." That looks a little guilty, Derek Colella. We're waiting on our end. They also received a phone call that lasted 9 seconds from, and this phone number that we see in these papers is a voice over internet protocol number that they got through Google, through a Gmail account. You can, in your Gmail account, you can get a free Google number. And they're really, I mean, really, this guy's dumb, because Google, the Gmail gives an IP address, they get your location. He called them. He says he pulled family information from a cyber website and that he had been following along and watching TV. When he said that he sent text messages, he was trying to see if the family would respond. I don't think so. Data received shows that approximately 3 minutes after the text messages, Colella called a family member of the NG, which lasted 9 seconds. So he called somebody. So this is all linked. But I don't know, but I can bet that if this guy was involved in the kidnapping, he would not have been released. But are they using him to get more information? Are they cutting him some sort of a deal? But this is really, 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 really interesting to me, because I could have sworn money was not. But like I said, I'm happy. I am so happy if they can figure this out and we can get Nancy back to her family. I am happy to be wrong on everything. I'm happy to find out that it was Dumbo the flying elephant who went rogue and took Nancy. I don't care. I just want to know what happened to this woman, and I just want it to make sense. And oddly enough, this French attack, it does make sense. It totally makes sense, especially for somebody in the area. And, why Savannah? Why these dates? Why Savannah? Why Nancy? Why? Well, why Savannah? Her mom lived in Tucson. I bet if Bill Gates' mother lived in Tucson, it would have been Bill Gates' mother. If it was Zosha, the crime-fighting kitty. Go, Zosha, the crime-fighting kitty. If it was Mr. Rogers' mother that lived in Tucson, and Mr. Rogers had $45 million. For S, TV ratings, and she pays the sheriff off and gives her mom a boatload of money in the end. This will come to fruition if N walks back through the door one day soon. You know what? That'd be great. And this is a great question. Did A&T notify authorities that the call was made? That's a very good question. And I like this comment even better. Bill Gates isn't human. Oh no. Hold on. Are you guys still there? Oh no. Hold on. My cat jumped on here. You guys still there? Let me know if you're still there, because someone tell me you're still there. I think you're still there. Looks like it's still going. Okay, the kitty made the computer go. Someone let me know that you're still there. Oh, thank God. Okay, thank you, thank you, thank you. I've never had that happen. All right, Zosha. Yeah, and I've gotten actually hate comments. I had somebody say, "I'm so sick of seeing animals. I am never watching your channel again." Well, that's fine. I can't help it. Zosha, if she jumps on here, she is a crime-fighting kitty. I can't control her. She is very naughty, though. Okay, thank you. I'm glad you're there. All right, so thoughts, discussion. I still think the family knew why this happened. I still think Savannah had been communicated with. So they don't have a name, but I'm very firm that the family knows who took Nancy, meaning it's the wrench attack. It's just, it was, what was the whole motive? And I did not think it would be money, but it looks like it could be money. And this person going with Buscando to, maybe they still think there's an angle to get money. Bill Gates isn't human and has no mother. And that I agree with. He is a lizard person. And he is a lizard person alien. So what I want to look into is I want to find out what type of Sonoran Nogales criminal does, is there a trend with wrench attacks, Bitcoin, kidnaps, and then what do they do with bodies? Do they actually bury them? Obviously, because there's a whole killing ground that they have unearthed. Okay, I'm going to switch over from there because I do want to look at Coral Smith, and I did not do that the other day. And I do want to look at Coral Smith because it just seems really odd. Let me share my screen. That Coral Smith is a woman who is on the run, and she has been accused of kidnap and assault with a weapon, and she was arrested not that far away from Nancy. And it's like, okay, yeah, maybe she's not behind Nancy, but birds of a feather. She's been in the drug scene. We know that Mexican criminals in the cartel are involved with the drug scene. So we're going to watch this News Nation nearby kidnapping investigation fuels search for answers. And the headline is "Wanted Woman May Hold Clues in Nancy Guthrie Case," retired detective says. So maybe they all link. Let's watch this. Please subscribe if you have not. I don't want your money. I don't want your super chats. I don't want anything. Please just subscribe, hit the bell, and watch. That's the only thing I ask for. All right, let's watch.
As badly as we do, you don't chase every single potential development nearby, but you also don't ignore the ones that stand out, like tonight's. A woman is on the run in Arizona, wanted in connection with a kidnapping and aggravated assault that occurred on May 29th, less than 7 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home in Tucson. The Pima County Sheriff's Department has issued a wanted alert for 40-year-old Coral Michelle Smith, and they urge residents to be on the lookout for her, but do not approach her. Got to be clear about something. Smith is not just any fugitive. She has a long and violent history in Pima County, dating back 15 years. According to KOLD 13 News, she was found guilty of robbery in 2011. 2014, she was found guilty of disorderly conduct and attempted vehicle theft. 2019, another robbery. That same year, she was also charged with kidnapping and drug charges, with the alleged victim listed as under 15 years old, according to the New York Post. But those charges were eventually dismissed. By the way, you still with me? Because we're not done. 2021, Smith was found guilty of criminal trespass. 2022, another attempted vehicle theft. 2023, she was found guilty of aggravated assault with physical injury. Did you know Smith has served a total of 4 separate prison sentences? She's also apparently used multiple aliases, including this unusual name under the C. Smith. Now, why are we telling you about this? Because authorities have, to be clear, they haven't connected this woman to Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. In fact, the Pima County Sheriff's Office confirmed to our team today the cases are not related. We're talking about this case because good investigations don't just look at the evidence. They look at the people, the patterns, the local criminal activity surrounding a case. Does Smith have any information about Nancy? Does her case provide investigators any answers or clues or leads as to what happened to Nancy? My next guest knows exactly how investigators think through developments like this. Chris Madonna is a retired homicide detective and director of the Cold Case Foundation and worked on some of the nation's most high-profile investigations, including John Benet Ramsey and Elizabeth Smart. Good to see you, sir. Thanks so much for taking the time. Look, authorities have been very clear. They have not connected this woman to Guthrie. But if you're working that case, to me, it feels like the kind of development you can't ignore. You have to look at and process, right?
Yeah, most definitely, Jesse. I mean, in any major, missing person or abduction type of investigation, the investigators are going to cast a wide net, specifically for anybody within the local, area who has a violent kidnapping, quote, history. And of course, her criminal background as a whole. So this would be a very standard protocol to try to find her and see if they can connect her in any way, shape, or form.
So if they catch her, let's say they catch her tomorrow, do you imagine they would ask her about Nancy Guthrie?
Yeah, I mean, if they capture her tomorrow, obviously, they're gonna do what we would call a soft approach to her, right? It wouldn't be accusatory. They would lead the conversations. Obviously, she'd be in custody, so they'd have to read her Miranda, and then they're going to ask her about any familiarity around the Guthrie home, et cetera. And then, what's the word on the street? And that's going to kind of give them a sense of whether or not she herself may be involved and or has heard anything floating around the criminal networks.
We see that in movies, right? Like, what did you hear? What did your sources say? What are you hearing on the street? But that's a real thing, right? Like the criminal community, it's not like a country club, but I have to imagine, know about other people participating in crimes or if there's certain, the capers coming around. I don't know, for the lack of a better word, because if you're looking at what happened to Nancy, right, let's assume that person is local. Let's say that's somebody who operates, and let's say that's somebody who, I'm talking about the person in the mask, has committed a crime before. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that she may have information about this.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, they're going to frame their questions, very open-ended, like, have you heard anything on the street about the missing woman in Catalina? And so it's going to be a very interesting piece of this puzzle. She may not be involved in any way, shape, or form, but she may have information that may connect something. And of course, there's $1 million sitting there in a reward fund.
And if she's facing serious charges, maybe they would work out a deal. We're speculating a lot, but here's the part I don't understand. How can they say to us that it's not connected? Now, is because, there's really nothing on its face to connect? Are they being honest with us? Or how do they exactly know that it has no connection to Nancy Guthrie whatsoever?
Well, in this particular situation, they would probably look at her MO of the very, in cases that she's been involved in for kidnapping. And they would measure that against the circumstances involving Miss Guthrie. And obviously 84 years old, home alone in her own bed. And they would measure those two cases together in what we call a criminal investigative analysis.
Do you think they're being honest with us?
I believe so. Yeah, the fact that this is being pushed out as a be on the lookout to patrol, I am quite concerned, though, that it did hit the public so soon. And I don't know what would have been the motivation for that. It should have stayed within law enforcement quarters.
That's interesting. Real quick, Nancy Guthrie, we know the DNA is still being processed. We got 15 seconds. What do you think's happening behind the scenes?
Jesse, I think at this point, they're going to circle back from day one and try to look into the first 24 to 48 hours. Typically, in these types of cases, your suspects are in the first 300 pages of something or somebody.
So that makes me wonder if that makes me wonder if, some of the people involved with, the 3 who were detained in those 2 SWAT raids maybe do know something. Just listening to Chris McDonough talk about, usually the suspect is in the first 300 pages. It's very possible. It's very possible that Derek Colella could know something. These 3 people that were detained and let go could know something. It could be just pieces of a puzzle. I feel frustrated because, I didn't feel any sense of urgency behind the Pima County Sheriff's Office, press statement when it was, came to the media that this group in Nogales had been looking and finding unmarked graves. It didn't seem like, I didn't feel a sense of urgency. Chris Nanos didn't come to a podium and say, we've heard this, we're checking up on it. It was, we haven't heard from the Mexican government. They've not reached out to us. And there was no follow-up saying we are going to reach out to the government of Mexico and find out more about this. There wasn't any next steps. It just sounded laissez-faire to me and very frustrating. I do question now whether things really are going on. I have suspected for a long time that they are onto something. We just don't know that they're onto something. And so maybe all of these pieces are being put together. Maybe, if this person with Buscando, if authorities did not know that there was an anonymous tip being called into this person, if they can get a phone number, because if they're anonymous, do they have a record of the phone number now being called in? So maybe the FBI is going to reach out to Buscando Corazones and ask for phone records. I mean, maybe there's an angle. Maybe it's nothing. I don't know. And hopefully, they're going to be searching again next week, Tuesday, the 16th. This group is going to go out, and this caller somehow, in a weird way, keeps reaching out saying, no, you guys are, go over here. Here's the tree. And how did Luke wreck his car? I think I want to go back and look at these guys. I want to go back and look at these guys who were detained. And I just have to wonder, I don't know. I think we need to, I'm going to write this down after we're done here. I want to look into these 3 people that were detained. They took the Range Rover, but they gave it back. I want to find out if there is a pattern of any of these bad guys actually burying bodies, because I don't know if they take the time to, obviously someone's getting buried, but do these people that kidnap, is that part of the pattern? Will they bury their victims? And I mean, just not even to talk about the emotional thought of my 84-year-old mother being kidnapped by a potential cartel member and being driven, maybe alive, across the border into a safe house, conscious, unconscious, alive, dead, I don't know, and then being buried in Mexico in an unmarked grave. That is, I mean, just, I cannot imagine the terror that Nancy Guthrie went through. The terror. It's unimaginable. So again, there's patterns, these dates. Something is always happening on specific dates when Savannah's doing something, saying something. These people are watching Savannah. And this kind of answers my question. If this is true, this at least answers my question of why Savannah, because it seemed kind of random. But this does make sense because of the location of her mother and the Today Show segment, that's exactly why it's Savannah. And I think we all agree that Bill Gates is not human and does not have a mother. So that is true. Actually, there is a theory that the Bill Gates we're seeing now isn't even the real Bill Gates, because he doesn't look exactly like he used to. And he had kind of odd behavior when he was younger, super nerdy, and now he's kind of like cool. So he could be a lizard person. Okay, you guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I have some homework to do, and I'm going to see what we can put together based on this, and I will be back. And if you guys find anything out, please message me, crimecrunchies@gmail.com, or comment on this video, because maybe between all of us, we can figure this out. And maybe we'll get Nancy back to her family. All right. Thanks again. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell. And until next time, I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Toodaloo.